Cheese. All right, welcome back to That's and Cheese, part of the Vendetta Sports Podcast Network. Today is Sunday, January 12th. We have a special guest on the line, Owen. You can find his podcast. We represent them too, the Triple Play Podcast. Owen, what's going on? I guess just kind of introduce who you are and what podcast you do and tell everyone where they can find you.
What's up, everyone? I'm Owen Oszust. I'm one of the hosts for the Triple Play Podcast. Really excited to be a part of Vendetta Media. And you can find it anywhere, pretty much, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just Anchor. I mean, we do it on Anchor, so it's on pretty much anything you could think of. We do the same thing. We talk about sports every week. It's a weekly podcast. And yeah.
All right, so make sure to go find Owen, give his podcast a listen. What we're going to do today, we're going to keep it kind of short. We're going to talk about the two Saturday NFL playoff games. I want to start with this, and I have a little bit of a rant, so just stay with me. You know what? I'm just so sick and tired of all these people. I hate everybody today. I'm a Ravens fan. I hate everybody. You know why? Because all year I had to sit there and listen to all these people tell me how great Lamar Jackson is and how I should apologize to Lamar Jackson because I said a lot of bad things about him, didn't like him coming out of the draft, and all these people all year just riding me. Oh, Lamar Jackson, he's this franchise quarterback. You can win with this guy. And what do you know? Again, he just doesn't even show up in the playoffs. Again, this guy stinks. You'll never win with this guy, ever. And you know what the worst part about it is? I'm a Ravens fan, and I laughed. I laughed of pure joy. Because you know what? This franchise, I used to love this franchise. This franchise was one of the, tough teams. They played defense, and they'd hit you in the mouth, and they'd run the football. And you know what? We had our share of bad quarterbacks. But you know what? They could throw. And this guy can't throw the ball. And the Baltimore Ravens sat there and said, we're going to win with a running back who's going to play quarterback. And you know what? Crazy thing is, it just doesn't work when you play good teams in the playoffs. So go ahead. What's your reaction? Because I'm just so mad at everybody.
The one thing, I don't understand why Mark Ingram only had 6 carries. You let Lamar Jackson, like you said, who at times does struggle throwing the football, throw it 59 times. He gets tempted 59 times. That's way too many times that you should let Lamar Jackson throw the football. I mean, you got to mix it up with Lamar, Gus, and it's just like when you got behind early in that game, then you had to go into the air, start throwing the football a lot more, and it's just like you gotta stick with what was working and running the football with Ingram, Edwards, and Jackson, and they went way too much into the air, and that's ultimately why the Tennessee Titans were able to win, because they just kept on giving it to Derrick Henry, and he just was the workhorse in that game, and he was running over people.
Isn't that funny, though? I think that's a good point, and I wrote maybe a little bit about this, but they're never going to win football games when they're trailing. You can put, Patrick Mahomes, you're down 7, you feel good. You have Deshaun Watson. They were playing Buffalo. Right. They're down 10. No big deal. We'll come back and win. They fell behind Tennessee 7-0, and the game was over because he can't throw and bring you back. And they're never going to win anything like that. It's one thing, you can catch people off guard. You can control the clock, get a lead, pick up running. When you have the lead, maybe this works. Exactly. They're never going to beat anybody down 7-0. And that's not sustainable.
Right. It's just, yeah. I mean, you're going to have to stick with it. That's the reason the Ravens were built to get early leads and then keep them. And like you said, with 2 minutes left, are you really going to rely on Lamar Jackson to drive you down the field? And, I mean, it's going to come down to his arm. Is he going to be able to do it? I mean, the only person that he really had to throw to is Marquise Brown and then also Mark Andrews. But, I mean, yeah, it's just you really can't rely on that sort of thing if you're down. And it's just, I knew at pretty much halftime that game was over because Tennessee Titans just continued to run the ball with Derrick Henry. And then I mean, 2 interceptions and the fumble from Lamar Jackson just isn't going to cut it. I thought last year maybe he'd do a lot better this year, but it was just the same narrative that they weren't able to put points up.
I just don't understand how we can continue to do this year after year after year. First it was, Kaepernick, this guy's so good. He sucks. RG3, Rookie of the Year. Like, it's a joke he won Rookie of the Year. Why do we continue to allow people to praise these running quarterbacks when at the end of the day we know they all stink? I just don't understand it. When will people learn their lessons? Nobody will ever learn. You know what's going to really help Lamar Jackson next year? When everyone has a full offseason to prepare for this offense. They're not going to be that good next year. They'll never be this good again. Because now the blueprint is out. The Titans have a good formula. They're never going to be this good again. And give the smart defensive coordinators a whole year to prepare what Greg Roman was doing. It's just going to be a steady decline from here. And I'm going to, get stuck watching this guy for another 5 years, and they're never going to win anything.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I feel your pain as a Lions fan. I mean, you guys have had way more success than us. I mean, we haven't even been close in recent history, just like the Browns. But, yeah, I mean, now you got defensive coordinators that are going to be able to adjust. Like you said, they're going to go over the offseason. They're going to watch this kind of film. What does the Tennessee Titans do to shut down the Ravens? And then they're just going to copy it. I mean, it's plain and simple. You're going to have to change something up on the offensive side for the Ravens, or it's just going to be the same narrative. I mean, even if you guys do continue to make the playoffs, I mean, you're probably never going to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson and this team.
You brought up Stafford, and I kind of can go into this. I like Stafford because I don't feel like it's Stafford's fault.
It's not. No, it's definitely not.
It's not Stafford's fault. Stafford has never been given the proper support. His best running back, ever is Kerryon Johnson in 10 years, 12 years? Ever? Right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say Reggie Bush. Honestly, it's just like Kerryon Johnson has the whole injury issue. We've never seen him healthy. I'm not sure if he'll ever be healthy, to be honest. So, I mean, I think we got to draft somebody personally for the Lions, but that's like beside the point. Yeah. And it's just like the defense this past season for the Lions. Like, we were swinging it. We were doing really good on offense. We were getting all those leads and everything, and our defense doesn't even show up with Matt Patricia. It's ridiculous, man. Yeah. And Stafford definitely does get decked for stupid things like that. It's just like, you can't expect to give up 40 points to every team. You gave up 28 points to Chicago, and it's ridiculous. I definitely feel your pain. So I've ranted all the time about the Detroit Lions, as I'm sure have you about your teams as well.
But here's my point. If you took Matt Stafford, you put him on the Chicago Bears, I think that team could win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You put Lamar Jackson on the Chicago Bears, that team has no shot. No shot. No shot. And the problem I have with this is the Ravens have done everything to try to make this work. They went big on the offensive line. Their offensive line is very good. They spent a lot of money for Mark Ingram. They drafted 3 tight ends very high, and Mark Andrews is really good. And they draft Hayden Hurst in the first round, who is not that good, but they tried. They drafted Marquise Brown in the first round. This team has done everything to try to make this plan work. And at times, it can look good. But you put Lamar Jackson on any team in the NFL that doesn't have this plan, and he looks a hell of a lot worse. And even with the plan, they'll still never win anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I feel like people are like, they're recreating the whole game of football. I mean, you can't recreate the game of football right now. It's a hard grind kind of football. It's Lamar Jackson. They're saying recreate the game. I mean, I still see him winning. He's probably going to still win MVP because of what he did in the regular season. But still, I mean, the dude's going to get overhyped, and I would not be surprised if next season he struggles.
Isn't that going to be so funny? We're going to watch the award ceremony. We're going to watch this guy get the MVP trophy and know that he's a total fraud.
Yeah, no, and see, everyone will point at, he'll get on the cover of Madden, and then everybody will be like, the curse of Madden. I guarantee you, it's going to be the same exact thing.
I can't make it up. as far as the Titans are concerned, it's a nice story. Derrick Henry's unbelievable, but I think they lose to. We're recording this on Sunday before the games. I think they lose to whoever, Houston or Kansas City. I think Kansas City or Houston beats them.
Yep. I feel it. I'll just make a bold predict that it is going to be the Chiefs. I just don't see Houston beating the Chiefs, but who knows at this point? We're still waiting for the game to start. But I feel like it's a nice story for the Titans, but I mean, there's really no momentum that can be carried in football because of it's a week-to-week basis. So I think they run out of firepower against the Chiefs.
I like their defense. I like the running game a lot. But let's think about this. Ryan Tannehill threw for 85 yards in that win. You're going to have to do a hell of a lot better going head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes.
Right. Especially if you're down in the football game, you can't just hand it off to Derrick Henry with 1 minute to go in the game and expect him to run all the way down from end zone to end zone. It's not possible. And that's why I think the Titans will lose.
All right, and we have Owen on the line here. Make sure to find his podcast, the Triple Play Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, everywhere you can find a podcast, the Triple Play Podcast by Owen. Make sure to give that a listen. Let's move on to the second topic here. The 49ers pummeled the Minnesota Vikings, and my main takeaway here is I think the 49ers are going to win it. I really, really do. They have everything that just sort of meshes as a championship team. Their defensive line, they control every game. Their offensive line, while it's not perfect, it's a good offensive line. They can run the football with anybody, and they don't necessarily have a star running back, but with Kyle Shanahan, it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to be productive. They got two good receivers who can get open, especially in the middle of the field. George Kittle, best tight end in football. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's a franchise quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. Good corners with Richard Sherman. Getting Quan Alexander back helps. I think they're winning it. I really do.
I'm gonna go with you. I think what you said about the running backs, just like one little nugget, is that when's the last time a Super Bowl team won with like a really good running back, like a star running back? Like, I can't remember the last time that was just like, well, this guy's going to win us a Super Bowl because he's a really good running back. The 49ers don't have that, and, I mean, they have Coleman, Mostert, Breida that they can just keep mixing up with the different guys and get the job done. And that's why I think you're absolutely right. And just Bosa coming at you, I mean, Bosa changes the whole game for the San Francisco 49ers. The second they drafted him, they put their franchise right back on the tracks. And, I mean, shutting down run games, you looked at Dalvin Cook, I mean, he didn't really get things going, only 9 carries for 18 yards, and that was pretty much the narrative, and Kirk Cousins had no blocking whatsoever. They were just constantly bringing pressure at him, and he had no chance against San Francisco 49ers.
San Fran has made me very rich this year. I bet them to take the over in the win total. I bet them to win the division. They've made me very rich. I'm going to bet them to win a Super Bowl. I just think they're the most complete team. Nobody puts out a defensive line like they have. Nobody really has 3 running backs that, all kind of work. And I trust Jimmy Garoppolo. He, say what you want about him, but the guy just doesn't lose. They had the second pick in the draft last year. Now they're the number 1 seed. If he stinks, you don't go from number 2 pick in the draft to number 1 seed. He's awesome, and I don't think he's getting nearly enough credit.
No, he's definitely not. I mean, it's just because he really doesn't get the opportunity to throw the football as much because they're running it so much, because they get those early leads, which throwing back to the Baltimore Ravens is what they did as well. And it's just like, I feel like the 49ers, if they could get up early in the Super Bowl, assuming that they do get there, I think they just would run away with it. I just think they have that offensive superpower to milk the clock as much as possible and then shut down on the other side of the football with their defense, because both sides are very balanced. They have what it takes to win a Super Bowl, and also good coaching as well with Shanahan. I really like what they're doing over in San Fran, and it's just like, yeah, I feel like they can win the Super Bowl, definitely.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up the games I wanted to talk about. We'll do 2 more quick little topics here. Number one, you're a big Detroit Lions fan. You're the GM today. What's your first move? What are you doing? Give me a plan.
Well, well, first off, if I was a GM, which let's assume Bob Quinn did get fired, right? I'm getting rid of Patricia. I'm sick of him. I'm done with him. I don't care what anyone says. He's a rocket scientist. He likes to say whatever he wants about. He one time he was like, we have to practice outside because their feet will hurt less or some crap about that. It's like bull crap. I don't even know what they're doing in Detroit, spending all that money on defense, right? And all of a sudden they are worse from the last season. Where'd that go? Trey Flowers, Justin Coleman, all these guys that we signed, they didn't do anything. The only thing that Trey Flowers did was the hands to the face, which that's bullcrap. But still, I mean, the only reason why Patricia and Bob Quinn were able to keep their jobs this offseason is because of our owner, Martha Ford, not really caring enough about this team. I mean, we don't have a hands-on owner, which I'm totally fine with. It's just like Martha Ford has no idea what she's doing running this franchise. To be able to recognize that Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia are not where it's at. But honestly, if I'm the Detroit Lions, I gotta get a pass rusher. Whether that's free agency and then the draft. If it's moving up for Chase Young, I don't care. Go get a pass rusher that can apply some kind of pressure on the quarterback, because we had absolutely none of that. And then quarterbacks were able to just sit back and just let their wide receivers get open, and then we got absolutely torched on defense. And then offense, Kerryon Johnson's injury issues, I would like for them to maybe draft or sign a running back that's solid, that could split time with Kerryon, so he doesn't have to take that load and just take the load on all the hits that he's taking. And then, there's so many things on the Detroit Lions that need to be fixed, because we're trending in the wrong direction as a franchise, honestly. And it's just like Bob Quinn, he's going to be desperate this offseason. It would not shock me if he does something incredibly stupid to try to save his job, because, I mean, there's, like you said about Matthew Stafford, that he's a really good quarterback, which I totally agree. But the thing is that Tua Tagovailoa will be there most likely at number 3. If he's not, he goes number 2 to the Redskins, which I could see as well. Then there's no question I'm taking Chase Young. But see, here's the thing: there's this narrative that the possibility of that pick having such high value that the Dolphins would possibly have to trade up for number 5. So Bob Quinn what he has to do is he has to market the crap out of that number 3 pick, so then they can move down, get a bunch of more picks, and then get those kind of guys that you could trade or whatever. Do whatever you want with those picks. But I'm just saying, there's really no guy that's great at number 3 that I would love that you can't get at number 5. And you got to be able to trade down. You got to market the crap out of that pick, whether it's maybe throw some shade at Stafford. I don't care. You just got to tell them behind the scenes that we're going to do whatever it takes to move down in this draft and get more assets. And that's what you got to do if you're Bob Quinn. But it wouldn't shock me if Bob Quinn comes out tomorrow or whatever day and says, "Oh, we love Stafford," which that's great. I love that he's behind Stafford. But that's not the point. You got to get trade value for this pick. It's such a valuable pick because right then and there it drops the value of your pick, because then you know that they're not going to take a quarterback, and Miami's going to sit number 5 and possibly get a superstar in Tua Tagovailoa if he's healthy.
So if I'm the Lions, I agree. Patricia's got to go. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is weird, but anybody who has a pencil in their ear and uses a laminated sheet doesn't really know what they're doing. It just doesn't make any sense. But the second thing is, if Tua's on the board, I'm taking him. And I just don't think you can pass on quarterbacks like this. And I like Stafford. I'm a big Stafford fan. I think he's Russell Wilson, except left-handed. I'm not passing on that. I can keep Stafford for a year and start him, or I can trade him. And I think Stafford has value. That's what I would do. I think he's too good to pass on.
Yeah, I mean, if number 3, you got all the intel that Tua's going to be good, I would draft Tua at number 3, and then put him behind Stafford for a year, right? Because then he's able to get healthy, get a little more mentorship. and then you go into next offseason, you trade Stafford to a contender that's going to be really desperate for him. And then you got Tua, he comes in, and then you're progressing and everything. But here's the thing, is that they're not going to do that because there's an ultimatum. With Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, that Martha Ford was like, you have to be playoff contenders this year. See, that's the problem. Nothing in life is going to turn out well if there's an ultimatum. And I just don't understand, why would you put those kind of guys in that situation knowing that they're not going to be able to draft Tua because they have their jobs on the line. They're not going to do that. They're going to be like, all right, who can we get at number 3 or number 5 that we could have an impact this season? And I don't like the situation that this franchise is in, and it would not shock me if we're just as bad, if not worse, next year.
The Lions are not smart enough to take Tua. What the Lions will probably do is they'll draft another tight end at 3. They'll draft Albert Okuigbunam, and then they'll sit there at the press conference and say, we have our Gronk and Aaron Hernandez now. We're going to win games.
If they took another tight end at number 3, I would. I don't even know. I wouldn't even watch the NFL anymore. I would have to pick a new team. I don't even know what they're doing. If they took offensive lineman at number 3, there's like no good guys that I would be like, oh yeah, I really want him at number 3 if it's not Tua, because you could definitely trade down and get more value than what you could get under number 3 sitting there. It's like the guy, I forgot the guy's name from Ohio State, the cornerback. He's like, I mean, he's good, but what cornerback has made an impact immediately in their first year that Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia want in order to win this season? And I don't see that, because 8-8 makes you a playoff contender. I'm doing air quotes, because it keeps you in the hunt, and that would keep their jobs. And that's all they need to do. I mean, at this point, it's a race from Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia to keep their jobs, and I don't like that. And it's like, as a Detroit Lions fan, I have no hope whatsoever. I'm not going to get my hope up until we start proving that we can actually win more than 6 games consistently. And that's what Jim Caldwell could do, and that's what Matt Patricia couldn't do.
Last thing, which NFL new head coach do you like the best? Which hire do you like the best? And if you were a team, who would you have hired?
Well, I mean, some people were angry that the Browns did not take Josh McDaniels as their head coach, but I do agree that this whole thing about head coaches going from coordinators on the Patriots to becoming a head coach has not worked out whatsoever in the NFL. I'm seeing it right now in Detroit. I mean, Matt Patricia was a solid coordinator for the Patriots, winning Super Bowls and everything, and now he can't win more than 6 games, and it's just embarrassing. But honestly, I kind of like the Ron Rivera signing by the Redskins. The minute he walked into that clubhouse, he took down it was like a pool table, whatever they had in there.
Ping pong
table. I forgot. Yeah, ping pong table. He took it down. He's like, we're done. I'm done messing around right here. He's gonna get. I feel like he could possibly get Dwayne Haskins right back on track. He's got to work with what he's got. I don't love Dwayne's game, but I mean, he's got to work with what he's got. Maybe they'll take another quarterback or something in that strap. But Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys, I think it's a solid find. It kind of concerns me that Jerry Jones had him sleeping over at his house. That's going to be his next pet toy that he had with Garrett. And I think the Cowboys aren't going to be elite until Jerry Jones is a little bit more hands-off with his head coaches. And he's like, okay, you can call whatever you want. I'll make the trades and the signings for the team. But you can't be entirely hands-on as a owner in the NFL, or it's just not going to work, honestly. But I don't know much about the signing that the Browns just did. What was his name?
Kevin Stefanski. He's the Vikings offensive coordinator.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of style he is, like, in the locker room or whatever, but the Cleveland Browns need a guy that's going to come in and set order. That's the one thing that they're lacking Cleveland this whole season. I mean, I heard in the broadcast for one of the Lions games that they interviewed David Blau and asked him about what was different between Cleveland and Detroit. He said it was absolute madness in Cleveland. They were just messing around in meetings and watching film. There was just no order. I mean, and then you watch Freddie Kitchens messing around with Baker Mayfield, that one clip that was released, where he was like pulling his beard and then calling him an idiot. Like, there's nothing going right in Cleveland. That's the reason why they lost. And I mean, and their wide receivers are supposedly wanting to get out of there. Like, you gotta get a guy. I'm hoping that this guy that they just hired is the answer for Cleveland, because he's got to get in, put his foot down, and say, "Hey, no, we're not messing around anymore. This is serious business. We want to win in Cleveland. We've been rebuilding for this long." And just like, I mean, you got to get your hands on this team and say, we're going to focus. I don't know if this is the guy or not. I don't know enough about him. I mean, his offense was very good this year with the Minnesota Vikings, but I mean, I definitely could see why Richard Sherman was pissed that his defensive coordinator was not hired as the candidate for the Cleveland Browns. But I think it's a little bit too early to tell this Cleveland Browns hire, but it's all about order in Cleveland. That's what they're currently lacking right now.
I think Matt Rule was the best hire. And I know he's a college guy, but...
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about him. My bad.
I didn't love any of the NFL candidates this year. I didn't see an offensive coordinator that really jumped out to me. I thought Matt Rule was the best hire, and number one, he seems like a big culture guy, and he's been known to turn around programs. Is. Temple was bad, turned him around overnight. Baylor was basically dead, took him to the Sugar Bowl. That's basically impossible. I think Matt Rule's a really good coach. He coaches both sides of the ball. He was a linebacker at Penn State. He was an offensive line coach in the NFL with the Giants. He really is involved on both sides of the ball, turns around programs overnight. Big leader. I watched his press conference. Just has a bunch of energy about him. Seems like a guy that can motivate you. I think he's by far the best hire.
I totally forgot him. I definitely agree that his guys are behind him. They love him. What I was watching on the sidelines and for their bowl game, it just seemed like those guys were behind him all the way to the end. And the way that he turned around Baylor was quite impressive. I could definitely see them, possibly the Carolina Panthers, coming back next season and make them playoffs. But I think you got to get a quarterback. I'm not sure if Greer or Allen is that kind of guy. I think you got to go look out in free agency or the draft and Rule. I mean, if Rule likes what he's got there, then he can work with it. But I feel like they need a better quarterback unless they're going to mend their ways with Cam Newton, which I just don't see happening.
They definitely need a new quarterback. All right, Owen, this was fun. Appreciate you coming on. Everyone who's listening, make sure to give Owen's podcast a listen. It's called the Triple Play Podcast, part of our website now. Owen, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. It was an absolute blast. I love working with Vendetta Media, and I can't wait for us to keep on growing.
All right, and that's going to do it for this episode of That's Some Cheese. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.
Tell you something. You know what really grinds my gears? You, America. Fuck you, Diane.